All right, tonight we're going to take a look at a topic that we touched upon last week. Last week we did the third of the 10 commandments, not to use God's name in vain. And there we spoke about the reverence a person should have when we mention the name of God. And that took us into the idea of saying a bracha. When we say a bracha, whether it's before we do a mitzvah or before we consume something. And if we're going to say the bracha, we spoke about how the bracha, the impact that it could have. And we said part of the impact it has is on a gilgul. What is a gilgul? The literal meaning of the word gilgul is that which goes around like a wheel. Talk about, what was the song? Hagalgalima, galgalima, galgalim, right? The wheels go round and round and round, okay? So, the gilgul? I thought the gilguls, they come back to haunt you after.
There's a couple more coming, Rabbi.
You want to take a chumash? Get a chumash? Okay.
It was the taxi driver. The Gagalim.
That I get, the wheel, okay. All right, so that's how we touched on this topic. And we could have gone on to the fourth of the 10 commandments, but we said, this is a good time for us to stop and take a look at the Jewish concept of what we call reincarnation, or we want to call the second time around. Wasn't that a Frank Sinatra song or something? They said, okay, second time around. All right. So to appreciate it, there's a lot to discuss. We're not going to be able to accomplish all of it tonight. But so we'll start tonight and hopefully we'll finish it next week. Let's take a look. And we want to see what are the biblical sources. Where do we know this from? So let's turn to page 209 in the Art Scroll, 209. This is the incident in which Judah married off his oldest son, Er, to Tamar. And Er dies. And let's take a look. We want chapter 38, verse 6. Take a look. Who wants to read that? Where's Chana? Chana, nice and loud. Go ahead.
Judah took a wife for Er, his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was evil in the eyes of Hashem, and Hashem caused him to die. Then Judah said to Onan, consort with your brother's wife and enter into levirate marriage with her and establish offspring for your brother. But Onan knew that the seed would not be his, so it was that whenever he would consort with his brother's wife, he would let it go to waste on the ground so as not to provide offspring for his brother. What he did was evil in the eyes of Hashem, and he caused him to die also.
Okay. Levirate marriage, which we'll see in a moment. If a man dies and he has no children, so his wife is called a Yavama, and she's not allowed to marry anyone else until her brother-in-law, if there's a brother-in-law, biblically can marry her, or the Torah gives an option, they can perform what's called chalitza, which is a ceremony in which they are released from this obligation. Either one is a mitzvah. Today, actually for the last maybe 1,200 years, only chalitza is performed. Only chalitza should be performed, is performed, okay? So when dies, so Yehuda wants Er's brother, Onan, to take the Yavama, to take his brother's wife. Now he doesn't want to. Why? Because it says he knew that the children, the seed would not be his. What does it mean the seed would not be his? Well, it makes no sense. It's his seed. It's his procreation. The child will be his. What does this mean? So we have to take a look and we have to see what is the source of this whole levirate marriage as Yibum. So let's go to page 1063, Deuteronomy chapter 25, 1063. 1063, and it's verse 5. Got it?
When brothers dwell together and one of them dies, and he has no child, the wife of the deceased shall not marry outside to a strange man. Her brother-in-law shall come to her and take her to himself as a wife and perform levirate marriage. It shall be that the firstborn, if she can bear, shall succeed to the name of his dead brother, so that his name not be blotted out from Israel. But if the man will not wish to marry his sister-in-law, and his sister-in-law shall ascend to the gate to the elders, and she shall say, my brother-in-law refuses to establish a name for his brother in Israel. He did not consent to perform the levirate marriage with me. Then the elders of his city shall summon him and speak to him. He shall stand and say, I do not wish to marry. Then his sister-in-law shall approach him before the eyes of the elders. She shall remove his shoe from on his foot and spit before him. Spit before him. She shall speak up and say.
She doesn't spit on him, but before him. Go ahead.
So is done to the man who will not build the house of his brother. And his name shall be proclaimed in Israel, the house of the one whose shoe was removed.
Removing the shoe is called chalitza. Now, this needs a lot of discussion. What's the shoe all about? What is the spitting all about? What is this all about? So we once discussed this a while ago. Maybe we'll touch on this business with the shoe either next week or maybe in 2 weeks, touch upon that. Because it's interesting, she takes off his shoe, and is it just by chance? What was the first thing God said to Moses at the burning bush? Remove your shoe. What's it all about? So there's something going on. All right, so it says over here, this is the biblical source of this mitzvah called Yibum. She's the Yavama. He, brother-in-law, is the Yavam, and they're going to consummate this Yibum. They choose not to, they do the Chalitza. It says that if she should have a child from this marriage with the brother-in-law, that child shall succeed to the name of the dead brother. What does that mean, succeed to the name of the dead? Does that mean that you should give him the name of the dead brother? So Nachmanides, the Ramban, says very clearly that is not the meaning. He says, because many times there's no mitzvah to call the child after the dead brother. They can if they want to. So what does it mean? So I notice on page 1064, take a look on the previous page. Same, you don't have to turn any pages. You have to turn any pages. It's right there, 1064, on the bottom, on the right side, in the commentary, under the Rashi. Want to say that, Hannah? The literal meaning.
The firstborn?
The literal meaning of the verse. You see that?
I see. The literal meaning of the verse would be that the firstborn child of the levirate marriage is named after the dead brother, so that his memory is carried on. This is true only in the spiritual sense, where there is no requirement to name the newborn son after the dead brother. However, the newborn does become the successor to the dead man's soul, so that his spiritual being is perpetuated.
Okay, now we're opening the door. From this mitzvah of Yibum, what is this whole concept of Yibum? This concept is that the soul of the dead brother is going to be perpetuated through the child, the offspring of this levirate marriage. So now we're assuming, obviously, in Judaism, of course, that every human being has a soul. So we're just assuming that. We're not here to discuss and show the sources for that. Okay, maybe we'll do it in 2 weeks. Let's get into that a little bit. So the soul, this soul is going to come back. It will be reincarnated. I heard with my own ears from some great rabbi, which they said in the name of the great Satmar rabbi. in which he mentioned that he said that those who perished in the Holocaust, they will be coming back in this next generation. Our children and grandchildren, especially those who bear their name, their souls will be reincarnated in them. Therefore, we should take every precaution to treat them with the utmost honor and respect. He said that not only are we going to be training our children, we can be fulfilling honor your father and your mother. Incredible statement. Okay. All right. So here we see this concept. Let's go to Genesis chapter 46, page 259. We want verse 8 through 12. This is talking about when Yaakov and his entire family are coming down to Egypt because of the famine. And it's going to list for us who is accompanying Yaakov. Let's go ahead. Let's see what it says.
Now these are the names of the children of Israel who were coming to Egypt: Jacob and his children, Jacob's firstborn, Reuben.
So who are we talking about? We're talking about history, or we talking about those who are actually coming? It says those who are coming. Go ahead.
Reuben's son, Anak, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi.
Okay, I think I'm going to do this, okay? Shimon's sons. Yemuel, Yamin, Ohad, Yachin, Sohar, Shaul, son of the Canaanite woman. Levi's sons, Gershon, Kahasim, Merari. Judah's sons. Go ahead, you take it.
Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan had died in the land of Canaan, and Perez's son were Hezron and Hamul.
Okay. What's the obvious question?
All becoming in.
We're talking about, excuse me?
What about the two tribes?
The two tribes. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay. What did you say, Michael?
All becoming if they.
Well, we're talking about those who are coming. Why mention and Onan altogether? They're not coming. They died. They're dead. And then not only that, it tells us his sons, and Onan, and then it says, but and Onan had died in the land of Canaan. We know that already. What's the purpose of this? So the Or Chaim tells us from the works we're going to discuss today. How do I know what I'm going to be talking about tonight? Where do I get it from? Okay, so what we're going to see in the verses, okay, that's there. Everything that I have tonight, I've taken from the sources, from the Kabbalistic sources, from the Sefer Taime, the book Ta'ameh HaMinhagim, and others, Or Chaim, those who will utilize the Kabbalistic writings. Or Chaim says, and Onan came down. They came with Yaakov to the land of Egypt. How did they come? It says they list them as his sons who came, but they physically died. They came as reincarnation in Peretz's sons, Hezron and Hamul. That's who and Onan came. Interesting. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 33, page 1015. This is Moshe's bracha, his blessing to all of Israel prior to his death. And he begins with his firstborn, with Reuben. So this is page 1015, verse 6.
May Reuben live and not die, and may his population be included in the count.
What does that mean? May he live and not die. Just say, may he live. You have it? No? Page 1015. What do you have?
You said 1,050.
1,115. Is that what I didn't say that? I'm a
1,015.
bad boy.
How many you got?
I'm a bad.
11:15.
Who used to say that? I'm a bad boy. Remember that? Anybody? Nobody? That was Lou Costello. Remember Abbott Costello? Lou Costello. I'm a bad boy. I'm sorry, 1,115. All right, say it again, please, Hannah.
May Reuben live and not die, and may his population be included in the count.
Okay, so what does it mean? Reuven, you should live and not die. Thank you. Just say you should live. Give him a bracha, you should live. What does it mean he should live? He's not going to live forever. So what does this mean? So here again, the commentaries say, may you live in the world to come and not have to be reincarnated to come back to this world and die a second time. That's Moshe's bracha. Now, why he gave that bracha to Reuven is a different discussion. That's what we're talking about. So here we have a few biblical sources to the eternity of the soul. The soul exists beyond death. Let's go to page 19. Taking me back and forth over here. We're getting a lot of exercise in our wrists. 19. Which is chapter 3, verse 19.
By the sweat of your brow shall you eat bread until you return to the ground from which you were taken. For you are dust, and to dust shall you return.
Okay. After the incident of eating from the tree of knowledge, this was part of the curse to Adam, to man. And that is that you shall return to the ground from where you were taken. You are dust, and to dust you shall return. By the way, this is the verse that indicates part of the importance of burial as opposed to cremation. And we have an actual explicit biblical mitzvah to bury, which is in the book of Deuteronomy. Okay? Man who was taken from the dust. What element of man was taken from the dust? His physical body, the container, the clothing of the soul. The body expires. But what about the life force that God blew into his nostrils, that soul? That can be reincarnated. Now, when we talk about reincarnation, there's two different phrases. There's transmigration and reincarnation. Transmigration, they say, usually refers to a soul going from one body to another human body. Reincarnation can refer to a soul which is going to go from a human body into something else. So let's take a look. Whenever we want to deal with something spiritual in Judaism, we must turn to food. Food. Well, that's the question. But this question is also dealt with by the great Orach Chaim HaKadosh, the 16th century great commentator. Why is it, you ever think of this question? Why is it that God created man and animal life that we need to eat? Why? You eat, you have to eat, you can eat fruits and vegetables, okay. But now we know that we eat life, we eat fish, we eat animals, we eat fowl. Some people have a problem with that. They're vegetarians, they don't want to take the life. Why do you think it's important that man should be created to be able to eat? Adam and Eve, eat. This you can't eat, all the other fruits and vegetables you can. Why is that so important? You ever think about it? I never thought about it. You ever think about it? Okay, let's take a look. So let's go to page 983. 983. Chapter 8, verse, what verse? 10. What are we talking about here?
Next one.
No, 983 on the very bottom. Very bottom, at least it is in mine, 983, I have the very bottom, last one. There is a biblical mitzvah to do Birkat HaMazon, also called benching. Okay? Want to read that? Yeah.
You will eat.
Verse 10. So-
It is on the next page.
Okay, wherever you have it, go ahead.
All right, you will eat and you will be satisfied, and bless Hashem your God for the good land that he gave you.
Okay, God tells us, eat. There's a mitzvah to bench. How are you going to bench if you don't eat? So we eat and we should be satisfied. And we should offer a blessing to God, thanking him for the wonderful, healthy food that we have to eat. And we see that biblically, there is a mitzvah to say a bracha. Bracha is a blessing. That biblical mitzvah is a bracha after our consumption. Biblically, we don't have any mitzvah to make a bracha on a food prior. That is rabbinic. The brachas that we say prior to consumption are rabbinic. Why did our sages institute a bracha prior to eating? What do you think? How do we connect to God? Okay, we thank him. It's very nice. Thank you so much. God invites us to his world. He brought us here. He gives us something to eat and he provides. So we say thank you.
It helps elevate the food for a better purpose.
Let's see. We're going to take a look. So our sages realize the importance of saying, not only thanking after we've eaten, you're invited to someone's house, you have a wonderful meal, and before you leave, you say thank you very much. Do we say thank you before? You might say thank you for having me, and then you're going to start eating. Sages said, no, we want a bracha before we eat. And what is the eating all about? So let's go to page 79. See, I make everybody turn the pages. This keeps you awake. Page 79. This is the parsha that we just had this Shabbos. We want verses 4 through 8. 3 angels come to visit Abraham, and they are in human form. Okay, verse 4. We have it.
Let some water be brought and wash your feet and recline beneath the tree. I will fetch a morsel of bread that you may sustain yourselves. Then go on, and as much as you have passed your servant's way. They said, do so, just as you have said.
So Abraham said, let me bring you some water, and I'll bring you some bread. Go ahead.
So Abraham hastened to the tent to Sarah and said, hurry, 3 seahs of meal, fine flour, knead and make cakes. Then Abraham ran to the cattle, took a calf, tender and cooked, and gave it to the youth who hurried to prepare it.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Let's do the
He
next
took
one.
cream and milk in the calf, which he had prepared, and placed these before them. He stood over them beneath the tree, and they ate.
Right. And the commentaries say, wait a minute, did he give them milk and meat together? Could he do that? So Rashi says, no, first he gave them the dairy, and then he gave them the meat. Others seem to understand it, that they ate it together, which is an interesting discussion that they had. Question. He went ahead and he says he ran after the cattle and he took the cattle and everything. If he took cattle, how did he prepare it? You tell me, what does he have to do? He's got to shecht it. Then what does he have to do? Then he's got to skin it. Then what does he have to do? He's got to do the koshering and he's got to remove the forbidden parts. And then he's got to cook it. Would it not have been a lot simpler just to give them some fish? Why did?
He was in the desert, wasn't he?
Well, I mean, he wasn't in the desert. Desert is between 2 major cities and everything. He had water. He had plenty of water. He was able to make the bread. Why didn't he give him some fish? Okay, you might say, all right, so funny question. No, this question is asked. We know that there is a minhag, a custom that we have Friday night to have fish. Gefilte fish. Why do we have gefilte fish? We'll talk about that when we get to the 4th commandment, okay, about Shabbos. But there's a custom to have fish. Now, if you don't like fish, you don't have to have it. But there is a custom that we have fish Friday night. Why is that? So they say because fish have no eyelids. Their eyes are always open. So, what does that mean to you? Their eyes are open. Their eyes are open, so Even when I put them in front of me and I talk, their eyes still remain open. It's amazing. It's miraculous. Miraculous. They have it's the open eye. They say that the fish are symbolic. The Kabbalists call this Eina Pekicha, the open eye, the astute open eye, which is symbolic of God's open eye upon mankind. What's going on over here? Something's going on. So, our sages teach us. Sages are, mostly this is revealed to us from Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, 16th century Kabbalist from Tzfas, also known as the Ari Zal. And his insights were incredible. And he says that the human soul can transmigrate and reincarnate not only into human beings, but into animals and fowl. Not only that, but also they can go into fish. And not only fish, but also vegetable, mineral, and water. A human soul can be found there. Okay? So he says, those that reincarnate into animal and fowl, the only way we can eat them is if we do shchita. What is shchita? The slaughtering. And that is an act which could be somewhat distressing to the soul. When we fish, no shchita is required. And we're taught that those that are reincarnated into fish, if the fish is kosher, a kosher type fish, it is the souls of the righteous. They weren't perfectly righteous, or else they wouldn't need any reincarnation. But they were righteous, but they need the element of reincarnation for a purpose, and they come in as fish. And therefore, they are taken and they don't require any shchita whatsoever. Yes.
That sounds a little fishy to me. I mean, why would a fish give a soul the opportunity to do
What
that?
makes you think the fish has a choice?
But what good would it do for the soul to be a
For
fish?
what?
I mean, how does that elevate the soul to become a fish?
Because this fish has the opportunity to be caught and trapped and consumed by someone, and especially at their Shabbos table. The soul that is found within this fish, if it is consumed appropriately, it can be exposed to the Shabbos sanctity. And that is going to be extremely beneficial for the soul. You look troubled. The question you need to ask is, what's the purpose of the whole reincarnation? Why be reincarnated into anything? Okay, we're going to get there. The righteous are reincarnated into fish. Those that require the shchita, animal and fowl, those are the reincarnations. Not every animal, but there are those in which they might possess a soul of one who was not included in the righteous. Maybe not wicked, but maybe not perfectly righteous, not even halfway righteous. Maybe like us, okay? So, why did Abraham not feed them fish? He didn't feed them fish, the commentaries say, because Abraham knew that their eating served the purpose of impacting on the souls that are found within the food. And he knew that fish, there would not be any Gilgal, because other than Abraham and Sarah, you did not have righteous who were living that needed to be reincarnated. There was no reincarnated soul to be found in fish that needed to be released by the eating of these guests. But there were souls of those who might be ordinary people that might be trapped or found within animal and fowl, in this case cattle, and therefore he gave that to the guests. Okay?
Yeah, but
Yes.
one of the three was Hashem, or the other two angels.
No, all three were angels. Hashem came, and then three angels came.
So if they were all angels, then why in the world did they even need food?
Okay, so they came in the form of human beings. And therefore, commentaries do say Abraham recognized they were angels, but since they came as human beings, he also understood that he was to treat them as human beings. And that's what God wanted, so he did. And hachnosas orchim, welcoming guests, which is the mitzvah Abraham performed, requires making them comfortable and giving them something to eat, which he did. Question you could ask, if they were angels, even if they had a human body, did they actually eat? Well, it looked like they ate. Go ahead.
Being angels, see how they would appear like them. A human neshama would not have entered into that.
Maybe they did. Maybe they did. How do you know that? So let's hold on, okay? There is divine supervision over every element of our consumption of food. We think eating is just so that we should be healthy and we should enjoy or whatever. The act of eating can have an enormous impact on that which we are consuming and thereby on us. All right, let's define this a little bit. If you're not completely confused, give me another opportunity, okay? So I can confuse you. All right, the Arizal. There are so many incidences with the Arizal. Why is there reincarnation? Let's address this. The purpose of the reincarnation is that if the human soul did not fulfill its mission, if something was missing, God gives us an opportunity in which it can be corrected. The Arizal, one of the incidences, he would go out to the fields with some of his selected disciples. Sometimes he went by a stream, and there it says that he tells his disciples that he was able to see and recognize hundreds of souls that were found on the trees, in the leaves, on the fruits, and in the water. He asked these souls, "Why are you here?" I know this sounds a little fantastic, but you know what? Let's listen to it. Let's hear. Okay? People want to live. Let's talk about Kabbalah. Well, this is Kabbalah. He asked them, "Why are you here?" These souls said that we live lives in which we need a lot of help. And we have come to hear the words of your Torah sessions, your Torah study, that it should serve as a means of purification and enable our souls to ascend. And he said, "I will do my best." Doesn't know what he can do, but he will do his best. Another incident, there's numerous, I'm just going to go through a few. Erev Shabbos, he lived in Tzvat. Anybody ever been in Tzvat to the synagogues of the Arizal? Okay, there were two. All right. So you know that the cemetery of Tzvat, which is a very holy cemetery, is right down the valley. And you could look straight across and you could even see what city? Meron. And who's buried in Meron? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the one who lived. He was from the Tanoim. I think he died in the 1st century. The Arizal lived in the 16th century. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was the instrument through which the knowledge of Kabbalah was presented to man. It wasn't organized into a method in which it could be transmitted until the Arizal. And that's why he put his synagogue right there. The first ones to say L'cha Doidi Kabbalah Shabbos was in the 16th century, the Arizal. They used to leave their synagogue and they went out into their courtyard. And in their courtyard, they would face Meron, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, his grave, and there they would do L'Chodaidi. L'Chodaidi is extremely Kabbalistic. It was authored by the Alshich, Rabbi Moshe Alshich, who was one of the Kabbalists in Tzvat at that time. So he goes Erev Shabbos, and he's standing there by the cemetery, right, looking over the cemetery. And he says he sees souls that are ascending from the cemetery, and he sees souls that are coming down. And he tells his disciples that the Arizal knew things. He knew things. Wasn't just talking off the top of his head. He knew. He was able to perceive. He said the souls that are ascending are the souls that are being given respite on Shabbos. Even the souls of the wicked who are enduring what we'll call purgatory, Gehenna, they get Shabbos off. They might have derided and they might have desecrated every Shabbos in their lives, and now they can't wait for Shabbos to come. Those are the souls that are ascending. What are the souls that are descending? He says on Shabbos, there is something in which it says that a person has an neshama yesera. Neshama yesera doesn't mean an additional soul. It means that our souls are in an expanded form. Imagine if all of a sudden our minds, we could see beyond what we ordinarily could see, we could comprehend beyond what we could comprehend. Our souls are expanded spiritually. Those were the souls coming down to attach themselves for Shabbos. Let's go to page 9. Page 9. Chapter 1, verses 26 through 28, page 9. Okay, this is God is speaking to Adam and to Eve when he created them. Okay?
And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. They shall rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and over the animal, the whole earth, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, the bird of the sky, and every living thing that moves on the earth.
Okay, so it seems a bit repetitious. God is talking to the angels. Why is he talking to the angels? That's a discussion that we'll leave for here. We're going to make man our image. What image does that have? God doesn't have any physical corporal image, okay? And he says this man's going to rule over the fish, the birds, animals, the whole earth, every creeping thing. And then he creates man. He tells him, be fruitful and multiply. And he tells him, subdue, rule over the fish, the bird, the sky, every living thing. What is this repetition? What does it mean? What does it mean man rules? How do we rule? So here we are taught that it means that man, you will have the ability to alter the spiritual state of that which is found and contained within the fish, the fowl, the animals, even creeping things, even insects. Doesn't mean we can consume insects. Okay, let's go to page 995. This is taken from the second paragraph of the Shema. Okay, verse 15.
I shall provide grass in your field for your cattle, and you will eat and you will be satisfied.
God is telling us if we listen to his mitzvahs, he'll give us rain, we'll have grain, wine, oil, there'll be grass in the field for your cattle, and we will eat and be satisfied. Here too, the Kabbalah see in this that there will be grass, which is consumed by the animal, which then man will be satisfied. Meaning that there will be vegetation consumed by animal, and animal will be consumed by man. What is this talking about? It's talking about the ascent. That spirit, that soul, which finds itself in the vegetation, it can be elevated and ascend, purified, if it is consumed by an animal, and then that animal is consumed by a human being. When we consume something, it becomes part of the very fabric and fiber of our protoplasm. Yes, ma'am.
How is this concept different from, say, the Hindu faith and the American Indians thinking they're spirits and everything?
I don't know. I'm not that well versed in that, to be honest with you, and maybe it's not that different. I don't know. I can't comment on that. I'm having enough trouble commenting on it. So, yes.
So all the world were vegetarians. How would the souls that are, the spirits that are part of the animals ever get from?
You're absolutely right. And when God said to Noah, you should eat the animals, it's important for the animals to be consumed. You're absolutely right. What about before Noah? At that point, the souls were not reincarnated into the animals. After a point, it had to be. Maybe the souls fell to such a level that now they came back as animals because maybe that's how they identified. That's how they identified through the actions of their life. You're absolutely right. So if there was something containing the vegetable, went into the animal, the animal goes into man, and man can perform mitzvahs, that soul is now part of a human being performing mitzvahs. Now you might think that this is okay, all right, say it whatever you want. There are halachic ramifications. In Proverbs chapter 20, verse 27, it says, there, what does it say? I wrote it down over here. Bear with me here, folks. Ner Hashem nishmas Adam. The flame of God, or the candle of God, is the soul of man. What does that mean? Based on that verse, we have Yortzeit candles, sugar candles. We light candles to welcome Shabbos and Yom Tov. What's with the candles? Why are Jews always lighting candles? What are we doing? It's based on this verse. The flame of God is the soul of man. They say that you cannot, it's hard to contain, you can't hold a fire. It's not something you can hold, but we can certainly sense the presence of a fire. You can see a fire. We can even sense it when we can't see it. We can feel the heat. The soul of man is similar to this. Something more important. I have one. I have one. Thank you. There's something even more important. And that is, if you have a candle, how many candles can you illuminate from that? It could be thousands. And what happens to the original flame? Nothing. Nothing. This is teaching us that the human soul is like a flame. And that flame can be transferred to another wick, to another substance. Does it detract from the first flame? Not necessarily, no, it doesn't. When we light a Yortzeit candle, it's because that flame is a means, it's a mechanism of attaching to the soul. That's for the Yortzeit candle, that's the same with a Shiva candle. Doesn't mean the soul is contained there, but it means this is somehow a connection. That soul is drawn through the flames, drawn here. When we light Shabbos candles, Yom Tov candles, we draw in the Shabbos and the Yom Tov by virtue of the flame. And that's the reason why women, what do women do when they light candles? Right? What's this all about? I was a little boy, I said, my mother doing this. What are there, flies in front of me? What is she doing? I didn't understand. This is what we're drawing in the Shabbos. Okay? So from the fact that we see that there's an element, a spiritual element based on this verse with the flames. Go ahead, yes.
Would it have anything to do with, like, the candles are made out of the pellet of the animals?
The wax from animals, it could be, but it could be something else, a different source.
Is this then symbolic of how we, through our souls, can positively affect other souls, like the candle can light thousands of other candles?
Yes, very good, very excellent. Okay, the flame is an element which is spiritual. In Judaism, we try to bury as soon as possible. In Yerushalayim, if somebody dies, they bury him that day. They don't want to wait till the next day. They don't keep a corpse overnight. That's in Yerushalayim, the old city. The rest of Israel, they try to do it as soon as, but even in the diaspora, we try to do as soon as possible. Now, some family has to come in, and it'll detract from honor for the deceased, so we wait. But we bury as soon as we can. Why? And this is a minhag, this is done. The answer is because when a person dies, the soul that leaves their body, the body returns to the dust. What about the soul? That soul might be ready to re-enter another living being. There might be a baby that's about to be born, or to be created, not born, to be conceived. This soul needs to attach itself. And therefore, we don't want to delay. It can have an impact on the soul. This is Jewish custom based on this. The soul by death begins its journey. We're not allowed to graft different species. You cannot take one species and graft it onto another. That's called kilayin. Kilayin. You're not allowed to do that. Why? What's the problem? So the problem, we are told, is because in vegetation itself, there can be souls that are found there. And if you're going to graft from one to the other, two things that they really don't mix, it's of a different species, we're going to mix these souls. We don't want to do that. When we say a bracha, before we eat, we ask the question over here, why did our sages institute that we say a bracha prior to eating? And why do we eat? Why is eating so important? Why did God create us that we need to consume? Because by our eating, we are enabling the soul, spirit, whatever that might be contained in that which we're consuming, that it can have an opportunity to be involved in the performance of mitzvahs. How? It's part of us. It becomes part of me. And the next mitzvah I do, that's part of me. Now, does that mean it's been reincarnated in me? Maybe. Maybe it joins to me. How long? That means every time we eat, we're getting more and more. Okay, so we'll probably have to get into that next. Okay? We say a bracha. When we say a bracha on something prior to eating it, that bracha, expression of gratitude to God, that unto itself purifies and elevates by expressing the name of God attached to this act of human consumption and pleasure. We transform it, and it has the ability to purify and elevate the soul. That soul doesn't necessarily enter into us. It could be we've provided it what it needs. And if that's what it needs, it's ready to leave and ascend where it needs to ascend. Last week I mentioned that it says, one who uses God's name in vain, lo yinakeh. God will not overlook this. I mentioned that means you don't see that statement by other transgressions. And our sages tell us even Yom Kippur, will not suffice for a person who uses God's name in vain. So I heard from a couple of people, they said, well, what are we supposed to do? I mean, so we're all going down the drain if that's the case. What do we do? So let me just say what I meant to say, and I didn't, was that Yom Kippur unto itself, even for sins we're not aware of, Yom Kippur itself has a purifying effect. Kippur itself. That's not effective for one who uses God's name in vain. In addition to Yom Kippur, there has to be appropriate regret and good deeds and Torah study or support of Torah study. That's what can remove the blemish of using Hashem's name in vain. That's how we have to do it. So when we eat something and we say a bracha, this takes on a whole new perspective. Yeah, okay, I said, brother, thank you, Hashem. Very nice. Thank me after you eat, not just before. I'm saying a bracha, the purpose is that if there's some spirit, something contained in this, it's ascending, it's elevating. This is all just the introduction. Okay, and it's beyond our time. We really need to conclude. So this week is the introduction. Next week, we're going to address how many times can a person come back? Twice, 3, 5? How many times? Do we say it's reincarnation for both men and women? Or maybe just men? Maybe just women? Is it both? Who comes back? If we've been reincarnated, let's say 5 times, so at the resurrection of the dead, who's coming back? Who's coming back? Yes, interesting question. Let's say a person lived in the 15th century and they were married, and then they came back in the 18th century, and then the 20th century, and they got married. So who are we going to be married to at the resurrection of the dead? Who's going to tell all the men what to do? A lot of people, huh? Well, manage, okay? Can a man, when he's reincarnated, become a woman? Can a woman? Can a woman be a man? All right. Are we alone? Now that we've touched upon this idea that there's the human body and then there's a soul, and these souls, these spirits might be, who knows what? It could be in the lettuce and tomatoes that you have with the salad or whatever it may be. Are we indeed alone? Are there other spirits and souls, maybe that are not associated with human life? Do they exist?
Like things, like in a book or a table?
Or unto themselves? Could they be around? Okay. And we've all heard of the dibik. Dibik means possession. Hebrew word debek, to attach. Booze, debek. So attach something. Possession. Dibik. What is this dibik? Has there been a dibik? And if there is a dibik, how do you undibik it? How do we do it? So next week, we'll take a look at it. Okay? Yes, sir.
When a soul comes back into an animal, because you can only eat the forequarter, how does it know that heck, it going to the back end? It's got to stay in the front.
The same way it knows where to go, the same way it knows to go to an animal, it knows about this too. Don't worry about that. Okay. All right, we'll stop over here next week.